Rintaro was a scary and often overlooked guy because of his tall and intimidating appearance. This deeply affected him emotionally, causing him to give up on socializing. However, everything changed when he met Karuko Waguri, a kind and sweet girl who sees him as a kind-hearted man. It was just another regular day at the two schools standing side by side. Kikyo, the prestigious all-girls school, and Chidori, the rough all-boys school. Rintaro, a student from Chidori, sat by the window, staring at the building next door. He had long accepted that he'd never understand the world of Kikyo girls. They avoided Chidori boys like they were contagious. One morning, Rintaro's friends, Saku, Sohei, and Ayato, got into an argument with two boys from another school. None of them wanted to take the blame, and they all started blaming each other. Things were about to turn into a fight, but then Rintaro stepped in. Just one serious look from him was enough to scare the other boys away. Afterward, he lightly scolded his friends for starting trouble, but they turned around and said it was actually Rintaro's fault. The two boys had apparently said something about him earlier. As they walked to school, Rintaro remembered why one of those guys might have recognized him. A while ago, there had been a couple arguing in front of his house. The girl slapped the guy and stormed off. Rintaro, trying to be helpful, walked up to the boy to check if he was okay. But the boy panicked, thought Rintaro was going to hit him, and ran away, only to trip and hurt himself. When Rintaro finished telling the story, his friends didn't look impressed. They knew Rintaro was kind, but his intimidating appearance often made people think he was dangerous. As the group continued walking, they passed two Kikyo girls. The girls quickly looked down and avoided eye contact. One of them dropped her handkerchief. Trying to be nice, Sohei picked it up and tried to return it. But the girl just glared at him and told him to throw it away. She didn't want anything to do with boys from Chidori. Sohei shrugged it off, pretending not to care. He told himself she was just too shy to talk to someone as handsome as him. The boys then entered their own school. It was a plain and simple building, nothing like the beautiful and clean Kikyo Academy next door. Rintaro couldn't help but think about how different the two schools were. The Kikyo girls acted like Chidori boys were some kind of threat. Chidori had a bad name. It was known for poor grades, wild boys, and a lack of discipline. The dislike from Kikyo was so strong that the girls even kept their curtains closed just so they didn't have to see the boys' school. Later, while Rintaro was scrolling through his phone, he got a notification. He had work that day and had to turn down his friend's invitation to hang out. That afternoon, heavy rain poured down as Rintaro ran to the cafe where he worked. His boss, Kyuko, who was also his mom, greeted him. Rintaro nervously asked if it was really okay for him to serve customers. He worried his scary appearance might drive him away. But Kyuko smiled and told him not to worry. There was only one customer to take care of. The rest of the staff were busy baking pastries for the next day's event, so Rintaro was in charge of the front counter. While setting things up, he noticed a wet umbrella by the entrance. Looking around, he saw a girl sitting alone at a table. She looked like a middle school student. What really caught his eye, though, was the stack of empty cake plates around her. She had already eaten several pieces. When the girl noticed him looking, her face turned red and she started to choke. Without thinking, Rintaro rushed over and gave her a glass of water. She quickly drank it but looked very embarrassed. Before he could say anything, she stood up, thanked him for the food, and ran out of the cafe. He was left standing there, unsure of what just happened. That night, while they were closing up, Kyuko casually told Rintaro that the girl's name was Waguri and that she was actually a regular customer. This only made Rintaro feel worse. He worried that his presence might scare her away for good. But Kyuko just laughed and told him not to worry. She said Waguri didn't seem like someone who would be easily scared, and that if anything, cake could solve the problem. The next day, Rintaro was still bothered by what happened. During lunch, he sat quietly, thinking about how he might apologize or where he might see Waguri again. When his friends came over, he told them to go ahead without him. Sohei, watching him walk away, quietly wondered why Rintaro never shared what was really on his mind. After school, Rintaro was relaxing in his room when his mom came in with unexpected news. Waguri was at the cafe and wanted to talk to him. Still in his casual clothes, he rushed downstairs and saw her waiting. Caught off guard, Rintaro awkwardly said hello, but then Waguri surprised him by saying she would treat him. A few minutes later, Rintaro found himself sitting across from her with a slice of strawberry cake and a drink in front of him. Waguri had come to say sorry for running away the day before. At first, Rintaro tried to turn down the treat, but he noticed her sneaking glances at the cake. Quietly, he pushed the plate toward her, offering it back. Though she hesitated, the cake was too tempting to resist. As she began eating with small, happy bites, Rintaro watched in amazement. He couldn't believe someone with such a small frame could have such a big appetite. After finishing her cake, Waguri explained that she hadn't planned to eat so many pieces the day before. She thought she was alone and could enjoy herself without anyone seeing, but getting caught in the middle of her cake binge had embarrassed her. It wasn't fear that made her run away, it was shame. She then admitted she had seen Rintaro working at the cafe before and had always been curious about him. Only now did Rintaro understand. Waguri hadn't run away because she was scared of him. She had been nervous. It wasn't his scary face that made her panic, but something else. Being near him made her heart race. Rintaro was surprised. Most girls either avoided him or acted afraid when they saw him. But Waguri's words were completely different. Her small confession replayed in his mind, and he felt his face grow hot. Not knowing what to do with all these feelings, he stood up and offered to walk her to the station since it was getting late. But before they left, she bought another cake and then said she'd walk by herself. The station wasn't far after all. As she walked away, she suddenly turned back and gave him a bright smile. "I never thought you were scary," she said gently. Then she disappeared into the night. What neither of them noticed was that two boys nearby had been watching everything, and they didn't look friendly. Later, back in his room, Rintaro stared at the floor, lost in thought. Waguri's kindness felt strange compared to how others usually treated him. All the mean things people had said about him over the years came rushing back, things said ever since he was a kid. But through the noise of those memories, Waguri's words echoed clearly in his head. For the first time in a long while, something inside him felt warm. That peaceful moment didn't last. His mom, Kyuko, suddenly burst into his room, holding a familiar box. It was one of the cakes Waguri had bought, but she dropped it outside, not far from the cafe. Worry filled Rintaro's chest. If Waguri had dropped the cake, maybe something had happened to her. He rushed outside and ran through the nearby streets, searching for any sign of her. He knew it could be dangerous at night. After a while, he heard his name being mentioned and followed the voices. What he saw made him freeze. Waguri was cornered by two men. They were asking her questions about him. Rintaro stayed hidden and listened. The men were spreading rumors, saying Rintaro had always been a troublemaker, even back in middle school. They called Shigori a bad school full of losers and said his friends were no good either. Hearing their cruel words hurt Rintaro deeply. He knew his school didn't have the best reputation and he wasn't perfect, but hearing himself described like that still stung. But then Waguri spoke up. She admitted the rumors sounded scary, but calmly asked why they believed such things without knowing Rintaro. She said if they talked to him, they'd see he was nothing like the rumors said. The men didn't listen. But Waguri didn't argue. She just told them to stop spreading lies. It wasn't right to judge someone without trying to understand them first. One of the men let go of her arm, but the other raised his fist, ready to hit her. That's when Rintaro rushed in without thinking. He jumped in front of her and shielded her with his body. Waguri gasped in shock. Rintaro made sure she was okay, then looked at the two guys with cold eyes. The moment they met his glare, both of them froze in fear and backed off without saying another word. Waguri quickly ran to Rintaro. She reached up to his forehead. It was bleeding. He had hit it against the wall while protecting her. She began apologizing, worried that he was badly hurt. But Rintaro gently told her it wasn't from a punch, and it wasn't that serious. Then he said something unexpected. He told her the wound was like punishment for doubting her and for dragging her into trouble. Waguri tried to lift his head, but he stayed bowed full of guilt. She had done nothing wrong and she got hurt because of him. But instead of letting him continue, Waguri gently wiped the blood from his forehead and told him something he had never heard before. She couldn't understand why people were afraid of him, because to her, he clearly seemed like a kind person. She didn't accept his apology. Instead, she simply thanked him. In that moment, something changed inside Rintaro. He had always accepted that people would misunderstand him. But now someone was looking at him differently, with honesty and warmth. After all the stares full of fear and hate, Waguri's smile felt like sunlight he had never expected to see. To make sure she got home safely, he walked her to the station. Just as he was about to leave, she called out to him. When he turned around, she was smiling and suggested that they eat cake together sometime. Surprised but quietly pleased, Rintaro nodded. Then they went their separate ways. He walked home while Waguri waited for her train, still thinking about the moment he had stepped in to protect her. The next morning, Rintaro arrived at school much earlier than usual. He hadn't slept well, with thoughts of Waguri lingering in his mind. As he stared out the window, wondering when she might visit the cafe again, something unexpected caught his eye. The curtains of the Kikyo school building shifted, and to his surprise, it was Waguri peeking out from behind them. Their eyes met across the courtyard. Both of them froze. Rintaro quickly shut the curtains, confused and surprised. He had thought Waguri was a middle school student. But now he realized something that changed everything. Waguri was actually a student at Kaikyo, and that could make everything more complicated. After Waguri was seen through the Kikyo window, the once quiet schoolyard at Chidori suddenly became full of students. So I sat at his desk, complaining to Rintaro about how the Kikyo girls kept giving him angry looks. Normally he wouldn't care, but today it really started to bother him. Every girl he passed gave him a cold stare and made him feel nervous. Soon, their friends Saku and Ayato arrived, greeting everyone with cheerful good mornings. But even they admitted that Kikyo girls had been giving them dirty looks too. So he was confused, especially because even someone as kind and handsome as Saku was being treated that way. Saku just shrugged it off but said he had never liked how Kaikyo girls looked down on them. He believed the two schools would never get along. Saku's words made Rintaro go quiet. That's when the others noticed a bandage on Rintaro's head. Before they could ask, Ayato wondered aloud why Rintaro's side of the curtains was shut. Trying to help, Sohei said it was probably because Rintaro didn't want to see the Kikyo building first thing in the morning. But Rintaro suddenly shouted that it wasn't true. His outburst surprised everyone and he awkwardly made up an excuse. Most of the group accepted it, but Saku still felt something was off. When class began, Rintaro couldn't focus. He kept thinking about Waguri's shocked face when she saw him earlier. He remembered how quickly he had closed the curtain. It must have looked rude. He started to worry she wouldn't come to the cake shop again. but thought maybe it would be better that way. The less involved she was with him, the better. After school, Sohei invited Rintaro to hang out. Rintaro checked with his mom at the cake shop, and since she didn't need help, he agreed to go with them for karaoke. As they left the school, they were laughing and chatting, already talking about what songs to sing and what food to eat. But before they could exit the school gates, they saw a large crowd. Curious, the group went to see what was going on, and to Rintaro's shock, it was Waguri. She was standing outside Chidori's gate, clearly waiting for someone. Rintaro quickly turned around, trying to stay out of sight. Meanwhile, Sohei marched up to Waguri and asked why a Kikyo student was outside their school. His rough tone scared her a little. Still, Waguri bravely said she was waiting for someone. Rintaro rushed over and pulled Sohei back, apologizing to Waguri. Then, to everyone's surprise, Sohei started crying. He wasn't angry, he was just jealous. Jealous that someone from their low-status school had a girlfriend. Suddenly, Waguri's friends came running, pushing through the crowd to bring her back to Kekyo. In the process, one of them bumped into Sohei. Angry, Sohei demanded an apology, but one of the girls slapped his hand away and glared at him before leaving with Waguri. As they walked away, Waguri looked back at Rintaro, her eyes full of worry. The group eventually left for karaoke, but Rintaro stayed a little behind, lost in thought. He wondered if Waguri really came just to see him, but told himself she might have been waiting for someone else. His friends looked back and were surprised. They told him his face looked scarier than usual. Confused, Rintaro touched his face and realized something strange. He might actually be happy. Embarrassed, he quickly caught up with the group. At the karaoke place, Sohei was singing loudly, but Rintaro stayed quiet. Sako noticed and asked if he was okay. Ayato and Sohei agreed. Rintaro had been acting weird all day, and they were especially worried since he showed up with an injury. Rintaro thought about telling the truth about Waguri, but imagined how they would react. In the end, he smiled and lied, saying everything was fine. His friends let it go and passed him the mic. Rintaro smiled at Saku and said he was okay. Saku nodded and sang along with him. That night, when Rintaro returned home, he noticed the cake shop lights were still on even though it was late. Curious, he went inside and was surprised to see Waguri waiting there. She smiled and apologized for what happened at school. She said she didn't expect so much trouble between their schools. Rintaro quickly said she had nothing to apologize for. Just then, Rintaro's mom, Kyuko, entered and scolded him for making Waguri wait. She told him to message next time. Kyuko offered Waguri some cake, and even though she said no, her stomach growled. Everyone laughed, and Rintaro invited her to share the cake with him. Rintaro quietly watched her eat, smiling as she enjoyed every bite. Then, between mouthfuls, she asked if Sohei was okay. Rintaro said yes, then asked her why she came to Chidori. Waguri looked down and honestly said she came to see him. She apologized again for causing a scene. But Rintaro told her not to apologize. He was actually happy she waited for him. He blushed, realizing what he had said, and quickly apologized for being weird. But Waguri said his words made her happy too, and he shouldn't take them back. They both looked away, red-faced. Then Rintaro admitted he was scared she might stop visiting the cake shop after finding out he went to Chidori. But Waguri said she was actually glad he was from Chidori, though she didn't say why. She stood up, said it was getting late, and smiled at him before leaving. But just before she walked out, Rintaro saw a sad look on her face. After she left, Rintaro just sat there, staring at her half-eaten cake. He felt bad and wondered if he had said something wrong. Kyuko walked in and saw how sad he looked. She was surprised. He had never looked this down before. Without asking too much, she guided him into the house. Eventually, Rintaro told her what happened. Kyuko listened quietly, then tapped his shoulder and flicked his forehead. She scolded him for letting Waguri walk home alone. Rintaro, still confused about Waguri's words, told her he didn't understand. Kyuko looked at him in disbelief and called him dense. She reminded him that Waguri never looked down on him for being from Chidori. Instead, she reached out to him with kindness. She asked what he thought about Waguri. Rintaro thought of all the mean things people had said about him over the years and felt like someone like Waguri was too good for him. Then suddenly, he punched himself in the face. Blood dripped from his nose and Kyuko panicked, trying to stop the bleeding. While she helped him, Rintaro realized something. He had really hurt Waguri's feelings. He decided he needed to make things right. The next morning, Waguri arrived at school early like always, but froze in surprise when she saw Rintaro waiting outside the Kikyo gate. When he saw her, he walked over and told her he had been waiting just for her. He apologized for hurting her. Waguri looked confused, so he said he saw her sad expression when she left the shop. She crouched down, embarrassed, and apologized for showing that side of herself. Rintaro knelt down too and told her to stop saying sorry. He realized that she had always been honest and kind to him, and he wanted to do the same for her. He admitted that he used to believe Chidori and Kikyo would always be enemies, but after meeting her, he started to care what people said about Kikyo because he didn't want them to speak badly about her. He apologized again, saying he was wrong to care about what others thought instead of how she felt. He also told her the truth, that it made him happy to know she had waited for him. Waguri looked surprised, but then gave him a warm smile and said he was forgiven. She stood up straight and formally introduced herself again, saying their schools didn't matter. What mattered was knowing each other for who they really were. Since there was still time before class, Waguri asked for a small favor. She wanted them to go to their classrooms and wave at each other from the windows. Rintaro agreed. When he got to his seat, he looked across and saw her smiling brightly, waving at him with both hands. He smiled and raised his hand too, watching her face light up with joy. The next day, Rintaro complained about how hot it was. Sohei suggested they go to the teacher's room to turn on the air conditioner. On the way there, Sohei complained that school was boring that day and said he couldn't stand it unless something fun happened. While saying this, he suddenly remembered that the sports festival would be happening later that month. Even though it was a normal school event, it was enough to get him super excited. However, when the teacher noticed his excitement, he told both Sohei and Rintaro that they wouldn't be able to take part in the festival. Hearing this, Sohei felt upset and asked why. The teacher explained that anyone who got a bad grade on the upcoming exam would have to take a makeup test during the festival instead of during the event. Sohei pointed out that they hadn't even taken the test yet, so they shouldn't be punished already. But the teacher, knowing they both had the worst grades in their class, didn't look convinced and asked if they truly believed they could pass. Sohei admitted he had already seen the test material and didn't think he could get a good grade. Even so, Sohei asked if their effort could still be rewarded. The teacher thought for a moment, then made a deal. If both of them managed to join the festival and Sohei won, he would buy him an ice cream. Later, Sohei sat at a desk with his hands on his head, completely stressed out, trying to figure out how many hours he needed to study to get a decent grade. Saku, who saw him like that, told him he wouldn't get anywhere if he kept panicking. Sohei then begged Saku to help him study for the test, but Saku refused, reminding him that even after studying together last time, Sohei still got a bad grade. Sohei promised that this time he would work hard for real and ask again. Meanwhile, Ayato went to see if Rintaro was feeling okay about the exam. But Rintaro was just as nervous and said he was also worried about everyone's grades. He asked Ayato for help, but Ayato admitted he didn't understand most of the test material either. Later, Sohei tried to guilt Saku into helping by reminding him that both he and Rintaro wouldn't be able to play in the festival if they failed, which would make the team weaker. But Saku still didn't care. At the same time, Rintaro got a message from his mom saying the bakery had a special sale. She told him to invite Waguri to go with him. So he sent Waguri a message, but she replied that she was too busy. After class, Sohei asked Rintaro to study with him at the school library. While they were studying, Sohei realized for the first time that he couldn't study well on his own. Rintaro told him to stop being stubborn and ask for help again. So I remember how he failed even after getting help before, which made him embarrassed to ask again. But Rintaro reminded him that Saku also looked forward to the festival and was probably just being grumpy. With a good talk, maybe they could convince him to help. So I finally realized he had been acting immature and decided to try fixing things. Before leaving, he said he was excited about the festival because Rintaro would be there too. While sitting alone in the library, Rintaro was surprised when two girls walked in looking for a place to study. He gave up his seat for them and left. On the way out, he heard Waguri's voice and saw that she was helping another classmate study. However, Waguri soon got distracted and started drawing in her books. Her classmate then told her that even someone at the top of the class like Waguri needs a breather sometimes. After hearing their conversation, Rintaro quietly left. He felt impressed by how dedicated Waguri was and disappointed in himself. Compared to her, he felt like a failure who went to a school full of useless students. The fact that he had failed even after getting help made him feel worse. He started to believe he wouldn't be able to pass the test and gave up, deciding he'd just take the makeup exam. But suddenly, Waguri walked up to him and said she saw him hiding behind the bookshelf and followed him. She asked if he had come to study too. He didn't know what to say. His studying wasn't going well at all. So he changed the topic. Waguri then brought up the bakery sale he had invited her to and said she might go to the next one. She explained that she needed to save money from her part-time job before spending too much. This surprised Rintaro. He had always assumed she was just a rich girl. Waguri told Rintaro that she wasn't the girl he thought she was. She also explained that she only joined the Kikyo school because she earned a scholarship, not because she came from a rich family. In fact, she said she didn't have much money and had to work harder than others to succeed. Rintaro was surprised to hear that and asked her why she worked so hard. Waguri explained that she had begged her father to let her attend the school, and now she didn't want to betray his trust. Hearing this, Rintaro felt inspired. He told Waguri he wanted to take his studies seriously, just like her, and asked if she could help him study. Hearing this made Waguri happy. Even though she was busy, she promised to reach out when she had time. Just as Waguri was about to leave, one of her friends, Subaru, showed up. He asked who the boy with her was and seemed suspicious of Rintaro. When Rintaro noticed Subaru's silver hair, he guessed that she was a foreigner. Subaru then asked Rintaro if he was from Chidori. When Rintaro said yes, Subaru got even more upset. He told Rintaro to stay away from Waguri, saying he didn't want someone from Chidori near his friend. Waguri tried to stop Subaru and explain, but Subaru interrupted her. She said he would do anything to protect Waguri from the so-called brutes of Chidori. It was clear she didn't trust Rintaro at all. Meanwhile, Rintaro's friends noticed Rintaro from a distance and called out to him. They then asked the two girls on what they were doing with Rintaro. Sumaru, annoyed, told Waguri that they shouldn't waste time talking to people from Chidori. One of the boys, Soe, didn't like being insulted and started walking toward them. He said he recognized Waguri and wanted to talk. At that moment, Subaru pulled Wagiri away and Rintaro pushed Sohei aside. Realizing what he had done, Rintaro quickly said he acted on instinct and didn't really understand why. As Subaru walked off, Saku mocked her and brought up an earlier question they hadn't answered. He also asked how Subaru was allowed to have dyed hair, since most Japanese schools don't permit it. He guessed she must be from a spoiled, rich family if her school was that relaxed. Just as Wagiri was about to defend Subaru, Rintaro stepped in and told Saku he had crossed the line. He reminded him that he wasn't usually the type to say such lame things. Rintaro also explained that the girl with Subaru was the same one who had been waiting at the Chigori gate the day before. He admitted that he was actually the one who first spoke to Wagiri, which is why they had been seen together. Sohei then apologized to Wagiri for scaring her the other day. Wagiri bowed and apologized too, in case she had done anything wrong. This surprised everyone, since Kikyo girls weren't usually like that. Subaru didn't like it and got angry with Wagiri for apologizing to students from Chidori. When Wagiri asked Subaru to apologize too, Subaru simply walked away. Later, while they were talking, Wagiri reminded Subaru that Rintaro had defended them when Saku made those horrible comments. This made Subaru think that maybe Rintaro wasn't so bad after all. That night, Rintaro went back home and tried studying again, but he kept making the same mistakes. Even though Saku had explained everything, he still couldn't get it right. While he was studying, Wagiri messaged him and asked if they could talk. When Rintaro answered the call, he noticed that her voice sounded softer than usual and asked if something was wrong. Wagiri said she just wanted to apologize for how her friend Subaru had acted earlier. She said Subaru was actually a good person deep down. Rintaro told her he wasn't angry, but Wagiri still felt bad. She said she had made Rintaro lie by pretending he had been the one to approach her, even though it was her idea to talk to him. As they spoke, Rintaro noticed that Wagiri still used very formal language, which made him feel like she was keeping her distance. Before ending the call, Wagiri asked if he wanted to study together that weekend. Rintaro happily accepted. Just as she was about to hang up, Rintaro quickly asked her to stop using such formal language with him, hoping it would help them get closer. After they hung up, both of them blushed, especially Wagiri. A few days later, Rintaro woke up early, feeling both nervous and excited. Today was the day he would study with Wagiri. He had been looking forward to this moment ever since they made plans together. After getting dressed, he took the train. Just like always, a few girls whispered about his height. He ignored them, though it made him feel a little awkward. He looked out the window as the train moved through the city. Even though it was the same view he saw every day, the buildings and streets felt brighter to him. Everything seemed new just because he was going to see Wagiri. When he arrived, he realized he was early. Wagiri was already there, waiting with a warm smile. Rintaro was surprised. As he looked closely at her, he began to notice how cute she really was. They went to a nearby cafe that Wagiri had been wanting to visit. When the food came, her face lit up as she took a bite. Rintaro quietly smiled while watching her. He remembered how Wagiri always seemed happiest when she was eating. Curious, he tried the food himself and found it surprisingly delicious. After eating, they began their study session with math. It went well at first, but at one point, Rintaro tried to show something in his notebook. Wagiri leaned in close to see. Their faces ended up very close to each other and both froze in place. Their cheeks turned red as they quickly pulled away, embarrassed. From that moment on, it became harder to concentrate. Their thoughts drifted elsewhere. Wagiri asked him why he wanted to pass the test so badly. Rintaro replied that he wanted to enjoy the sports festival with his friends. She found that answer amusing and teased him gently, asking if he really loved his friends that much. Rintaro thought for a moment and admitted that he did. Wagiri said she understood. She began talking about her friendship with Subaru, her childhood friend. Even though Subaru acted cold and tough, Wagiri believed she was a good person. She explained that Subaru had a hard time with boys in the past, which caused her to act distant. But it meant a lot to Wagiri that Rintaro hadn't spoken badly about Subaru when they first met. Before going home, Wagiri handed him a notebook. It was filled with study notes she had made for him. Rintaro was touched by her effort. He told her he didn't want to be a burden, but Wagiri insisted they were in it together. She wanted him to enjoy the festival with his friends. She said she would look forward to hearing all about it. Then she smiled, waved goodbye, and walked away. Just as Rintaro turned to leave, someone grabbed his arm. It was Subaru. She looked serious and asked him to talk privately. Rintaro, confused but curious, followed her to another cafe. He already felt nervous before the conversation began. Once they sat down, Subaru asked him if he was dating Wagiri. The question shocked him so much that he dropped his hot coffee, burning his hand. Subaru calmly gave him a handkerchief. Her behavior was surprisingly gentle. She asked again what kind of relationship he had with Wagiri. Rintaro wasn't sure how to answer. They hadn't known each other long. He admitted they only met recently, which seemed to ease Subaru's mind a little. Then Subaru made a surprising request. She asked him to stay away from Wagiri. Rintaro tried to explain that just because he came from Chidori, it didn't mean he was a bad person. Subaru replied that she already knew that. She remembered how he had stood up for her before, even when she had insulted him and his friends. But she explained that Wagiri's school, especially the teachers, looked down on students from Chidori. Wagiri was able to stay in the school only because of her scholarship. If people saw her getting close to someone from Chidori, her future could be affected. As they spoke, a small child tripped nearby. Rintaro moved to help, but Subaru reached the child first. She picked up the toy the child dropped and returned it. The child thanked her and even complimented her unique hair, calling it cool. Subaru smiled faintly, and the moment seemed to bring back memories for her. She told Rintaro that when she was younger, she was bullied for having unusual hair. But Wagiri was the first person to say something nice about it. She had stood up for her and made her feel accepted. From that day on, Subaru looked up to her and made a promise to protect her, no matter what. Even if Wagiri ended up hating her, she would still protect her. Subaru then bowed her head and repeated her request for Rintaro to stay away from Wagiri. Rintaro thought about how people from Chidori and Kikyo Hyde didn't get along. But Wagiri had been different. She didn't treat him badly. She had wanted to know him better. He gently refused Subaru's request. He couldn't bring himself to stop seeing Wagiri after everything they had shared. After Rintaro left, Subaru stayed behind in the cafe, feeling conflicted. She knew things would get harder from here. But she also knew something else. Wagiri had smiled the brightest when she was with Rintaro. Later, while riding the train home, Rintaro continued thinking about Subaru. He had never met someone who cared so deeply about a friend. It made him wonder if he had ever cared that much about anyone before. Two girls walked into the train car looking for a seat. Without hesitation, Rintaro gave up his seat for them. They recognized him and thanked him. One of them mentioned that he had also given up a library seat before. Rintaro didn't expect to be thanked, especially since most people were intimidated by his appearance. That moment reminded him of Wagiri. She always noticed the small things he did and made sure to thank him. He realized she had a way of saving people, not just Subaru, but him as well. The next week at school, everyone was tense. The teacher was about to announce the exam results. He looked around the room with a serious face and finally said that both Rintaro and Sohei had passed. The classroom went completely silent for a moment. Then the students erupted in cheers. They celebrated loudly, calling them the two biggest idiots in class, but in a loving way. Rintaro was overwhelmed with happiness. Some classmates even cried from joy. Everyone thanked Saku for tutoring them, and Rintaro made sure to thank him too. As Rintaro pulled out his phone to message Wagiri and share the good news, he suddenly stopped. Subaru's words came back to him. He stared at the screen, unsure what to do. At that moment, Saku bumped into his desk during a celebration and some books fell to the floor. While helping to pick them up, Saku noticed the notebook Wagiri had given Rintaro. Her name was clearly written on it. Curious, Saku asked about it. Before Rintaro could say anything, Saku was already asking about the note. Rintaro froze in shock. Saku had seen Wagiri's notebook. Soon, the rest of their friends gathered around. Ayato tried to grab the notebook, but Rintaro reached for it at the same time. Unfortunately, Ayato had already seen the name written inside. He remembered hearing Subaru call Wagiri by name in the library and started putting the pieces together. Saku began asking if Rintaro's reason for talking to Wagiri that day was even real. The atmosphere grew tense. Other students started watching closely, wondering if a fight might break out between Saku, Rintaro, Ayato, and Sohei. Saku kept asking questions, but Rintaro couldn't find the right words. He wasn't sure if he should tell the truth about Wagiri. In the end, he simply said that he didn't want to talk about it at the moment. Before anyone could say more, the teacher walked over and told them to clean up because class was starting soon. As everyone began tidying up, Sohei noticed the tension and quickly pulled Saku away to calm him down. Rintaro quietly apologized to Ayato, who forgave him right away. Still, Rintaro felt guilty about how things ended with Saku. After school, Rintaro went straight home, upset with himself for leaving Wagiri's notebook out in the open. He thought about the note she left inside and realized he still hadn't properly thanked her. Meanwhile, Wagiri was studying when she got a text. It was from Rintaro thanking her for helping him pass his exams. He told her it was all because of her. Wagiri blushed and smiled as she replied, saying he deserved some credit too because he worked hard. She ended her message by telling him to enjoy the upcoming sports festival. Rintaro read the message, but Subaru's warning echoed in his mind about staying away from Wagiri. Not knowing what to do, he didn't reply and turned off his phone. Wagiri saw that he read her message but didn't mind. She simply wondered what kind of events he might enjoy at the Chidori Sports Festival. The next day, Sohei and Ayato were still worried. Ever since the notebook incident, Rintaro and Saku had been avoiding each other. Ayato told Sohei that it was his turn to help since Rintaro was the one who helped them fix things before. Sohei agreed, though he was nervous. Wearing a cap, he invited both Saku and Rintaro to practice baseball at the batting cages. Sadly, both of them turned him down. Sohei began to worry. How would they manage the sports festival if things stayed this way? Still, he didn't give up and kept watching his friends closely, determined to help. Later that day, Rintaro and Saku still walked home separately. On Saku's way home, Ayato and Sohei suddenly showed up and asked to talk. Saku brushed them off, saying there was nothing to talk about. But Ayato was serious and didn't back down. Surprised by Ayato's firm tone, Saku glanced back but only muttered that he was annoyed. He walked faster, forcing his friends to catch up. A few steps behind, Ayato called out and asked if Saku was mad because Rintaro was involved with a student from Kikyo. Saku scoffed and said that wasn't it. What really bothered him was that Rintaro didn't trust any of them. His honest words caught both Ayato and Sohei off guard. They had never seen Saku this upset. Saku stopped walking and looked down. He remembered the early days of their friendship when Rintaro had thanked him for always being there. Rintaro had promised to listen whenever Saku needed someone. He thought they were equals, friends who could trust each other. So I thought carefully, then said Rintaro just had that kind of personality, kind and selfless. He probably didn't even realize how Saku was feeling, but it didn't mean he thought badly of him. Ayato agreed. He reminded Saku that during the notebook incident, Rintaro didn't push them away completely. He had admitted something was wrong but wasn't ready to talk. That moment was the most honest he had ever been. It made Ayato happy because it felt like they finally saw the real Rintaro. Ayato believed Rintaro would open up more one day when he was ready. Saku still looked down, but he seemed calmer. To cheer them up, Sohei suggested they go eat ramen. Meanwhile, at his family's cake shop, Rintaro was helping clean the display cases. His mother, Kyuko, noticed his gloomy mood and teased him, asking if he failed a test. Rintaro said he passed everything. She laughed, thinking he was joking, until she realized he was serious. She even joked that maybe he cheated, which annoyed Rintaro. Just then, the shop bell rang. Kyuko welcomed the customer cheerfully. It was Waguri. Hearing her name, Rintaro hid behind the counter, eyes wide with panic. Waguri apologized for arriving late and asked if there were still cakes left. As she chatted with Kyuko, she mentioned wanting to treat herself for doing well on her midterms. Kyuko looked toward Rintaro, trying to get him to come out, but he signaled for her to keep quiet. Annoyed, Kyuko grabbed his arm and pulled him up, revealing him to Waguri. She told Waguri that Rintaro had been there the whole time and also did well on his exams. Then she nudged him to take Waguri's order before walking back into the kitchen. Waguri stepped forward, smiling. Before ordering, she lifted her hands above her head and said it was time for a high five to celebrate. Rintaro smiled and gave her a weak high five. Waguri noticed it lacked energy and gave him a curious look but didn't say anything. Rintaro quickly packed her cakes. After giving her the box, Rintaro offered to walk her home, but Waguri said no. He still had shop duties. As she picked up her cakes, she told him to eat well if he's feeling sad. Rintaro was surprised. Waguri explained that eating always made her feel better. She nervously tried to give examples, stumbling over her words. Rintaro couldn't help but laugh. For the first time in a while, he laughed freely. Waguri smiled warmly, glad to see him feel lighter. Rintaro stared at her as she promised to visit again soon. He kept looking at the door even after she left. From the kitchen, Kyuko peeked out to check on them. Seeing her son lost in thought, she quietly stepped back, giving him space. Alone, Rintaro let his expression soften. The warmth Waguri left behind stayed with him. He remembered Subaru's warning that he should stay away from Waguri for her sake. For a while, he believed it. But now, after seeing her smile just for him, he started to question that belief. He realized he couldn't ignore her anymore. Waguri was special to him, and he didn't quite understand his feelings yet, but they were growing. At the train station, Waguri waited for her train. Seeing Rintaro at the shop had been a surprise. She had only gone there for cake, but seeing him was the best part. She thought about his laugh and how cute it was. She also remembered the high five and worried a little about his lack of energy. She pulled out her phone and reread their old messages about the sports festival. She wondered if she should have asked what was bothering him. Then suddenly, her phone buzzed with a new message. Later that night, back at home, Rintaro sat down for dinner. The food looked a little special. He took a bite and was surprised it tasted amazing. Kyuko told him it was a small celebration for passing his exams. She said he had been working hard and deserved some recognition. Rintaro mentioned he even got a perfect score on one test. Kyuko flicked his forehead, still surprised at how good his grades were. She told him she was happy, not just about the grades, but because she saw him changing. She remembered how easily he gave up as a child. More than anything, she was proud of his new attitude. She added that she could tell something else was bothering him but wouldn't push. She believed he'd figure it out when he was ready. She mentioned how she had worried before when things got awkward between him and Waguri. But when she saw him run out the door that time to fix things, she knew he was someone who cared deeply and always tried to do what was right. As she got up from the table, she told him that all she wanted was for him to be happy. Elsewhere, Subaru sat quietly at the old playground from her childhood. She thought about how Waguri had always defended her when they were little. Soon, Waguri arrived and apologized for being late. She looked around and recognized the place. And she asked Subaru what was so important it couldn't wait until school. Subaru took a deep breath and said quietly, "I talked to Rintaro." Subaru remembered a day from her childhood when she cried hard because she was scared after Waguri fell from the monkey bars. Waguri had been smiling completely fine and tried to calm her down, saying she'd been obsessed with hanging upside down lately. That only made Subaru cry harder, afraid it was dangerous. Through her tears, Subaru made Waguri promise not to do risky things anymore, and Waguri agreed, wiping her tears and promising to be more careful. She had even told Subaru that she was a kind person for worrying. Now in the present, that memory made Subaru cry again. In her mind, she could see younger Waguri, cute, small, kind, and beautiful. But more than that, Waguri had been stubborn and strong. To Subaru, she was a hero. Wanting to hold on to that feeling, Subaru imagined hugging the younger Waguri from behind, wishing she could be more like her. Snapping back to reality, Subaru admitted something to the real Waguri. She told her she had spoken to Rintaro recently. She had seen him at a cafe over the weekend and waited until Wagiri left before approaching him. Subaru confessed that she had asked him to stay away from Wagiri, and now she felt deeply sorry for it. Wagiri was shocked at first but quickly calmed down, which surprised Subaru. Wagiri explained that she had recently learned how much Kaikyo and Chidori dislike each other, and that Subaru's meeting with a Chidori student must have been for her sake. Smiling, Wagiri apologized for making Subaru worry so much. Subaru felt confused. Why was Wagiri apologizing to her? The truth was, ever since that conversation with Rintaro, Subaru had been afraid Wagiri would find out. She had been distracted at school, even when Wagiri tried to talk to her. But Rintaro never told Wagiri, and Subaru began to feel relieved, thinking their friendship would stay the same. She tried to live as if nothing had happened, but the guilt kept growing until she felt like she couldn't breathe. Finally, unable to carry the weight any longer, she texted Wagiri to meet her here so she could confess everything. Subaru apologized again and again, realizing she hadn't changed from the weak girl she used to be. Even though she had grown her hair and tried to look stronger, inside she still depended on others. As she cried and apologized, her thoughts began to spiral. Wagiri took her hand and lightly slapped her cheek, smiling warmly. She suggested they spend the evening at the park like they did when they were kids. Without hesitation, Wagiri ran to the monkey bars and started hanging from them. Subaru, eyes still swollen from crying, told her to be careful because her clothes might get dirty. Wagiri just smiled and reminded her that they used to play until they were filthy. She asked if Subaru remembered the time she fell from the bars. This time, Wagiri admitted it had hurt a lot, but she had cheered up because of Subaru's words back then, when Subaru begged her to send all her pain to her so she wouldn't have to feel it. Subaru flushed and denied it, but Wagiri insisted those words had taken away her pain. She called Subaru kind, but Subaru argued that Wagiri's kindness had saved her instead. Slightly annoyed, Wagiri pressed her face into Subaru's chest, telling her to stop putting herself down. She reminded Subaru that she loved her, and that Subaru should love herself too. Wagiri explained that after the fall, Subaru could have scolded her for being reckless, but instead she cried for her. That was proof she was a kind girl. Growing up with Subaru by her side had always made her happy because she knew Subaru would support her no matter what. Hugging her, Wagiri said she hoped Subaru would one day see herself the same way. Heading toward the slide, Wagiri promised she would keep reminding Subaru how much she loved and valued her until Subaru finally believed it. Watching her, Subaru realized how honest Wagiri had always been. Even as a child, she never hesitated to speak her mind, especially when defending her. When Wagiri reached the bottom of the slide, Subaru hugged her tightly and explained everything she had said to Rintaro, apologizing for not asking first. She then asked what Wagiri wanted to do. Hugging her back, Wagiri admitted she still wanted to see Rintaro. Surprised, Subaru asked if she loved him. Without hesitation, Wagiri said yes and that she was serious. Subaru smiled and told her what Rintaro had said in reply. When Wagiri learned that Rintaro had refused to stop seeing her, her eyes widened and she blushed, hiding her face in Subaru's arms. Subaru held Wagiri close, burying her face into her hair. She knew she wasn't ready to love herself yet, but as long as Wagiri loved and accepted her, she could live with that. She would always believe in Wagiri and silently promise to stay by her side. One day, she hoped to love the version of herself that Wagiri loved. She wanted to grow stronger and stand beside her with her head held high. After a while, they left the park, both relieved they had finally talked things through. Wagiri even teased Subaru for crying, saying it had been ages since she last saw her in tears. Then Wagiri's phone chimed. She checked it and saw a message from Rintaro. He wanted to ask her something and wondered if he could call. At that moment, Rintaro was waiting anxiously for her reply. Subaru's words from before had been on his mind. He wanted to talk to her again but didn't have her number, so he had to go through Wagiri. He worried his message might seem strange since he'd left her last ones unanswered. Then it hit him maybe Subaru wanted to keep their talk at the cafe a secret. Unsure how to bring it up, he overthought it until Wagiri suddenly called him. Panicking, he answered, unprepared. He started by apologizing for not replying sooner, but Wagiri quickly forgave him and asked why he wanted to talk. Nervously, he said he wanted to speak with Subaru. He sounded awkward, but Wagiri didn't hesitate. She told him Subaru was with her right now and handed the phone over. Rintaro heard Subaru greet him on the other end. Taking a breath, he said he wanted to continue their cafe conversation because he had something to add. Subaru suggested they meet in person after school the next day. The following afternoon, Rintaro arrived at the park she had mentioned and found her waiting. He asked if it was okay to meet while still in their school uniforms. Subaru smiled and said it was fine. Then, a bit stiffly, Rintaro asked what it would take for her to let him keep seeing Wagiri. Subaru jokingly told him that she wasn't Wagiri's mother and had no right to make that decision. This flustered him, but he went on to explain that he understood the tension between their schools, yet still wanted to see Wagiri. At the same time, he didn't want to cause her trouble and didn't know what to do. What he really meant was, he wanted Subaru's help to make sure their meetings didn't create problems for Wagiri, since Subaru would know best. Subaru stared at him, saying he shouldn't be asking her that, especially after she already told him to stay away. She even reminded him she'd said some harsh things. She admitted she was surprised he wasn't angry. Rintaro shook his head, saying he wasn't mad, especially because it was clear how much she cared for Wagiri. He admitted her insults had rattled him, but he respected her for how hard she worked to make sure Waguri was happy. He said he couldn't ignore someone who cared that much, and he wanted her to be at ease with him seeing Waguri, knowing it mattered to her. For the first time in their talk, Subaru met his eyes. Inside, she felt relieved that the man Waguri loved was so kind-hearted. At the same time, guilt tugged at her for treating him so coldly before. A small laugh escaped her, and she muttered that she was an idiot. Then she told him she'd already told Waguri everything they discussed at the cafe. Rintaro froze, worried about whether she had included his more personal words. Subaru didn't answer directly. Instead, she said it might be possible for him to keep seeing Waguri if they met far away from either school. Before he could respond, a soccer ball slammed into his stomach, making him double over. A young boy ran up to apologize, but stopped when he recognized them as the pair who had helped fix his toy at the cafe. Grinning, he said they must be good friends since he always saw them talking together. Both Subaru and Rintaro were reminded of how much their schools hated each other. Rintaro quickly tried to say they weren't really friends, but the boy didn't believe him, insisting people who talked like that had to be friends. His friends called to him, and he waved before running off. Subaru admitted that calling them friends might be a stretch, but said she hoped one day Rintaro could see her that way. Surprised, he stepped back, reminding her about his school. To his surprise, Subaru didn't seem bothered. He asked if something had happened, but she just smiled and said, "That's a secret." Rintaro lay flat on his bed with his phone in hand, scrolling through the group chat he shared with his closest friends. Normally, the chat was full of chatter, jokes, complaints about homework, or arguments over sports. But now the silence felt heavy. There hadn't been any activity for days. The more Rintaro looked at the empty chat, the more he realized the reason behind it. He knew it was because of him. Something had changed between him and his friends after what happened a few days ago. He had kept secrets from them, and that distance was now clear. Just as regret sank deeper in his chest, his screen lit up with a new message. It was from Waguri. She asked if he had managed to meet Subaru. Relief washed over him. At least someone still reached out. He replied that he had met Subaru and added a quick apology for keeping the cafe meeting a secret. He expected her to be upset, but instead, Waguri's message surprised him. She said she was happy. Now Subaru knew they were friends, and that was enough for her. For a moment, Rintaro stared at her words, his chest warming. He's still worried about his friends, but maybe not everything was falling apart. At Shigori, preparations for sports day filled the school atmosphere. Students trained hard, running across the grounds and practicing in teams. Baseball practice was in full swing when Soai groaned loudly. He had noticed something off for days. Pointing across the field, he muttered about Rintaro's strange behavior. The others looked, and what they saw confirmed it. Rintaro stood in the outfield, his mind clearly elsewhere. He missed every ball that came his way, even letting one hit him in the side without reacting in time. Soai frowned. Normally, Rintaro was incredible at sports, even if his grades in class were far from impressive. But lately, he had been restless, twitchy, and distracted, even during lessons. Soai remembered asking him once if something was wrong. Rintaro had denied it, brushing off the concern. But today, Soai was certain Rintaro was hiding something, and he had had enough of being left in the dark. He called Ayato and Saku closer, lowering his voice. The three boys exchanged uneasy glances, and soon they decided to follow Rintaro after practice. If Rintaro wouldn't tell them himself, they would find out what was really going on. The sun was dipping low when practice ended. Rintaro packed his things and left the school quietly, unaware of the three shadows trailing behind him. Soai, Saku, and Ayato kept their distance, ducking behind trees and corners whenever he looked around. Rintaro's steps carried him far from school until he reached a park. There, waiting for him, were Waguri and Subaru. The boys stopped in their tracks, wide-eyed. What was Rintaro doing with girls from Kikyo Academy, especially Subaru, the girl known to hate Chidori boys? They followed him further when the three went to a family restaurant. Sitting at a nearby table, they leaned in close to eavesdrop. Inside, Rintaro apologized to Waguri and Subaru for calling them out again. He felt guilty for dragging them into his problems. But Waguri, without thinking, admitted she was glad to see him more often. The words slipped before she could stop herself, and her cheeks burned red. Subaru raised an eyebrow at her friends, silently teasing her for being too obvious. The three boys hidden nearby watched with mixed feelings. Soi's jealousy boiled. Rintaro looked far too comfortable with the girls. Saku, however, whispered for everyone to stay quiet. They needed to understand the situation before making assumptions. Finally, Subaru turned serious and asked Rintaro why he wanted to meet. Rintaro's tone softened as he explained. He said he wanted to be honest with his friends. He had kept his friendship with the girls a secret, but hiding it was weighing him down. He admitted that in the past, his appearance scared people away, and he had grown used to the idea of being alone. But then he came to Chigori, where Sohei, Saku, and Ayato accepted him. For the first time, he felt like he had a place he belonged. He admired the strong bond between Waguri and Subaru, who trusted and protected each other no matter what. He wanted the same kind of bond with his own friends. That was why he wanted to confess everything and trust them with the secret, even if it meant trouble for the girls. Rintaro bowed deeply, apologizing once more. He didn't want to put Waguri and Subaru at risk, but he also didn't want to give up on his friends. To his surprise, both are happy that he wants to tell his friends about them. Subaru is even grateful that he considered her feelings before making a decision. Waguri adds that if Rintaro trusts them, then she will also put her faith in him. Shigen says she's open to the idea that all of them could become friends one day. The suggestion makes Subaru worry, but Rintaro feel warm. As night fell, Rintaro offered to walk the girls to the station. They strolled under the dim streetlights until Subaru suddenly slowed down. She spoke up, saying she wanted him to introduce them to his friends someday. She wanted to apologize for her harsh words at the library. Rintaro smiled and promised he would. But before they could leave, a group of men appeared. The blonde-haired leader stepped forward, mocking Rintaro. He accused him of beating up his juniors and said he looked like the kind of guy who would. Rintaro recognized some of the faces. They were the same men who had once hurt Waguri. He tried to avoid trouble, speaking politely and asking to leave. But more men blocked the path. Their eyes soon fell on the girls, recognizing them as Kikyo students. They smirked, calling them cute and stepping closer. Rintaro immediately moved in front of Waguri and Subaru, shielding them. He told the leader to let the girls go home. But the men only sneered, one even reaching out to touch Subaru's hair. That was when another hand grabbed his wrist. It was Soai. Behind him appeared Saku and Ayato, stepping out from their hiding place. They told Rintaro to take the girls away while they handled it. Rintaro hesitated, but the determination in their faces left no room for argument. He guided the girls quickly toward the station, shouting back that he would talk to them later. Back in the park, Saku strode up to the two men hiding by a tree, calling them cowards for clinging to their group. The men spat insults, but Saku's sharp tongue cut them down. One admitted they were the ones who had injured Rintaro before. Hearing this, Ayato dropped his bag, his calm expression hardening. The fight didn't last long. The three friends overpowered the men. Sylvie admired Ayato's skill, while Ayato, ever composed, warned the men not to trouble them again. Then together, the three left the defeated group behind. At the station, Rintaro apologized to Waguri and Subaru, but they only worried about his friends. Soon Ayato called cheerful to assure Rintaro that everything was fine. Relieved, Rintaro told the girls they were safe. The next morning, Chidori's sports day arrived. The grounds were filled with cheers, laughter, and competition. Rintaro's classmates pushed him forward, chanting for a home run. But his mind was still clouded with guilt and worry. He struck out badly, disappointing everyone. They told him to rest on the bench. Washing his face, Rintaro thought about how badly he wanted to enjoy this day, yet couldn't because of the heavy weight in his heart. Just then, a water bottle is thrown to him. Looking forward, he saw his friends approaching with relaxed smiles. They teased him lightly, trying to cheer him up. Rintaro finally thanked them for saving him the night before. They grinned, asking how Waguri and Subaru were doing. Then, without meaning to, Sohei admitted they had been spying on him. Rintaro's face flushed red as realization struck. They had followed him from the restaurant all along. Before he could say anything, Sohei pulled Ayato away, leaving Saku behind with him. Saku spoke first. He admitted he was sorry for spying, for saying harsh words earlier, for not thinking of Rintaro's feelings. Rintaro immediately tried to take the blame himself, but Saku stopped him. He pointed out that Rintaro always blamed himself even when it wasn't his fault. Taking a deep breath, Saku confessed. He said Rintaro's words yesterday had truly made him happy. The people he treasured most in the world were Sohei, Ayato, and Rintaro. He asked Rintaro to trust them more. Rintaro's throat tightened, his eyes burning with tears. He crouched down, trying to hide his face, overwhelmed by emotion. From a distance, Sohei and Ayato watched, smiling with relief. Finally, the bond between them was being repaired. Back in the game, the class grew nervous. The score was tight, and Rintaro was up to bat again. Whispers spread through the team. He had been off all day. Could they really rely on him now? Then Saku's voice rang out. He reassured everyone that Rintaro was the kind of person who rose when it mattered most. The pitcher threw the ball. Rintaro's grip tightened. He swung with all of his strength. The bat connected with a loud crack. The ball soared high into the sky, carrying everyone's eyes with it. Gasps turned into shouts of amazement. Rintaro dashed across the bases, the sunlight warm on his back. By the time he reached home plate, his class exploded in cheers, rushing to surround him. Hands clapped his shoulders, arms wrapped around him, voices showered him with praise. For once, Rintaro didn't push away the attention. He let himself enjoy the moment, basking in the joy of being with his friends. Not far away, a student snapped a photo. Rintaro smiling, his friends laughing beside him, youth captured in its brightest light. After sports day ended, Rintaro and his friends decided to go out for ice cream. They had to pay with their own money because their teacher, who was supposed to treat them, changed plans. The reason was Sohei's mistake. He threw a bad pitch that allowed the other team to score a home run. Sohei felt bad about it and complained that the ice cream didn't feel special anymore since it wasn't a teacher's treat. Seeing his gloomy mood, the lady at the shop noticed and kindly offered him some free takoyaki. The small gift lifted Sohei's spirits right away. With smiles returning, the boys sat down to eat. Rintaro, however, stayed quiet, just listening to his friends chat and laugh. Suddenly, Rintaro's phone rang. He read the message and his eyes widened. Standing quickly, he asked if his friends were free afterward. Curious but willing, they agreed to follow him. Rintaro led them to a nearby park. Their two girls were already waiting, Waguri and Subaru. When the boys arrived, the girls introduced themselves, and the boys politely did the same. Surprisingly, Sohei and Waguri started chatting right away. They compared their school sports days and even talked about baseball matches. Rintaro was shocked at how natural they sounded, almost like old friends even though they had just met. Ayada noticed how far the park was from their school and whispered that the location was probably chosen so no one from either school would see them. Sako guessed the same. Then Wagiri stepped forward. After a glance at Subaru, she bowed slightly and thanked the boys for saving them yesterday from a gang. The boys brushed it off as nothing important, but Wagiri shook her head. To her, it was a big deal. She handed them a bag packed with snacks as a sign of gratitude. The boys were touched. Shui especially was amazed by the girl's kindness. He even teared up a little, saying he wanted to start eating right away. But just as he reached out, Subaru suddenly stood up. Her expression was serious and her voice carried regret. She apologized for her behavior at the library, the harsh words she had spoken and how wrongly she had judged them. Bowing deeply, she asked for forgiveness, afraid they might still hold a grudge. There was silence. Then, surprisingly, Soei was the first to answer. He admitted he didn't even remember what she said back then. The boys froze, remembering that Soei had almost started a fight because of those very words. Yet Soei only smiled carefree and told Subaru not to worry, since he was used to being insulted anyway. Subaru looked uneasy at this. She and Wagiri didn't think their school insulted Chidori that often. Saku then stepped forward too. He admitted he had spoken harshly to Subaru without understanding her situation. Shocked, Subaru stared at him, but after a moment she forgave him, saying they were both at fault. Rintaro and Wagiri exchanged relieved smiles. Their first proper meeting with the girls was going better than they had hoped. Mistakes were being acknowledged and bridges were being built. Meanwhile, Wagiri whispered to Subaru that this was the perfect moment to give her gift. Nervously, Subaru called everyone's attention and handed them a fancy bag. Inside were expensive sweets that had been popular on TV. The boys were thrilled, marveling at the treats and quickly suggesting they have a pastry party together. Wagiri accepted immediately, but Subaru hesitated. She reminded them again that she was from Kikyo. Sohei just waved off her concern. He told her they didn't care which school she was from. The boys added that Rintaro had already spoken highly of Subaru and Wagiri. Since Rintaro was their friend, they trusted his words completely. If he said the girls were kind, then they believed it wholeheartedly. Sohei even offered Subaru a cookie from her own gift. He told her that people should simply accept one another and strive to get along. Touched by his sincerity, Subaru smiled and took the cookie, accepting the invitation. As everyone enjoyed the sweets, Subaru couldn't help feeling guilty. She realized she should have trusted Wagiri earlier instead of doubting the boys. But now she was grateful for the chance to learn more about them and start fresh. When the sun began to set, the group started heading home. Along the way, Sohei playfully called out to Subaru, urging her to walk closer so they could talk about the sweets, hoping their teacher might buy them in the future. This caused Wagiri and Rintaro to naturally fall behind the group, giving them a chance to talk quietly together. Wagiri smiled, relieved that Subaru was finally getting along with Rintaro's friends. After a moment, Rintaro gathered courage and asked if there was anything she would like, since he wanted to thank her for helping him study. Wagiri suddenly stopped walking. Looking calm but serious, she asked if they could go out together sometime. Rintaro blinked, surprised by her directness. He remembered what Sohei had told him earlier, that lately he seemed more honest and straightforward. Thinking about Wagiri, Rintaro felt grateful. She was part of his life. A few days later, Rintaro boarded a train. He was on his way to meet Wagiri for the outing they had agreed upon. His heart raced and tried to convince himself it wasn't a date, just two friends hanging out. But when he overheard another couple on the train chatting about dates, his nerves only grew worse. When he stepped off, he heard his name. Wagiri had just gotten off the same train. She greeted him with a bright smile, saying she had been looking forward to the day ever since he agreed. Together, they headed to the aquarium. Inside, they were immediately drawn to the colorful fish tanks. Both admitted it had been years since their last visit. Rintaro remembered coming in elementary school and ignoring all the small fish, eager to see the big ones. When he asked about the dolphin show, Wagiri's eyes sparkled. She admitted she had only seen dolphin shows on TV and had always wanted to watch one in person. Since this aquarium was holding shows for only a limited time, she felt it was her big chance. The show wasn't until 3 p.m. though, so Wagiri eagerly talked about the other things she wanted to do, rides, food, and more exhibits. She worried there might not be enough time. Rintaro chuckled and reassured her they had plenty of time. He told her not to worry about what he wanted since today was her day. Wagiri smiled brightly at him and they continued exploring. They admired the jellyfish displays, laughed at the penguins, and even tried out some of the small rides inside the aquarium. For lunch, they had hot dogs at special tables that doubled as mini aquariums filled with fish. It was a small but fun detail. As they ate, Wagiri asked about his school's sports day. Rintaro began telling her stories about Chidori's events, enjoying how easy it was to talk with her. Time passed quickly, and soon it was almost time for the dolphin show. Before heading in, Rintaro excused himself to the restroom. Wagiri sat on a bench nearby, scrolling through the photos they had taken so far. Smiling softly, she thought about how wonderful the day had been. Meanwhile, inside the restroom, Rintaro splashed cold water on his face. His heart wouldn't calm down. Every time he looked at Wagiri, it raced. He wondered if she was truly enjoying herself, but her constant smiles reassured him. A worn, unfamiliar feeling spread in his chest. When he came back out, he saw Wagiri with the little girl beside her. The girl looked nervous. Wagiri explained that she had found the girl wandering alone and learned her name was Micah. She was lost and looking for her parents. Wagiri decided to check near the shark exhibit, where Mecca had last seen them. She asked Rintaro to stay with the girl in case her parents came back. As Wagiri left, Mika clutched Rintaro's shirt. They sat together and Mika apologized for ruining what she thought was his date. Rintaro quickly denied it was a date, fumbling for words. But Mecca giggled and said dates were fun. She even confessed she wanted to go on one with her kindergarten crush, Daiki. Her cheerful description of how happy Daiki's smile made her and how much she admired him made Rintaro pause. Suddenly, Mecca's innocent words echoed inside him. He thought back to Wagiri's smile, her laughter, and how much he enjoyed being with her. A warmth filled his chest again, stronger this time as his feelings became clear. Just then, Wagiri returned with Mecca's parents. Mecca ran to them in relief. They thanked both Rintaro and Wagiri for helping. Before leaving, Mecca dashed back and whispered mischievously to Rintaro that she thought he and Wagiri made a great couple. Rintaro blushed deep red while Mecca giggled and ran off. Wagiri suggested heading home since the dolphin show had ended, but Rintaro quickly asked if she had more time. There was still an evening show, and they could stay to watch it. Delighted, Wagiri agreed. As the evening fell, they entered the stadium for the last dolphin show. The lights dimmed and silence filled the air. A spotlight shone on the water before a dolphin leaped high into the air, splashing down with grace. Gasps and cheers erupted as more dolphins joined, performing breathtaking flips and synchronized jumps. Rintaro and Wagiri watched in awe. Wagiri's eyes sparkled as she admitted how happy she was to finally see a live dolphin show. She then turned to Rintaro, thanking him softly. She explained that she never expected anything in return for helping him before. Just being able to lend a hand was enough, but spending the day with him had been truly special, and she enjoyed every moment. Rintaro studied her smile, glowing under the lights of the aquarium. Micah's earlier words echoed again in his mind. For the first time, he understood clearly. The warmth in his chest was love. He had fallen for Wagiri. One rainy morning, Rintaro walked quickly through the streets on his way to school. His face was dark and serious, which made a few people move out of his way nervously. By the time he arrived at class, his friends were already there, complaining about the gloomy weather and wondering why Rintaro was late. The classroom door banged open, and Rintaro appeared. For a moment, he just stood in the doorway before walking to his seat. His movements were heavy, and the whole class turned to look at him. His friends exchanged looks immediately, sensing something was off. When he sat down, they noticed his expression looked harsher than usual. One of them even told him his face looked scarier than normal. Rintaro shifted uncomfortably, especially when another pointed out that he was still wearing his winter uniform even though everyone had already switched to summer clothes. Ayato suddenly mentioned that the Kikyo girls must also be in their summer uniforms now. At that, Rintaro froze and his books slipped out of his bag. His friends looked at each other, realizing that something about that name had struck a nerve. Ayato and Soai whispered about asking him directly, but Saku stopped them, saying Rintaro would talk when he was ready. They agreed to drop it and continued chatting casually, trying to lift the mood. Rintaro, however, couldn't focus. As he picked up his notes, his thoughts drifted back to the aquarium trip with Wagiri. He hadn't been able to stop thinking about her ever since. His eyes wandered to the window where he could see the curtains drawn in Wagiri's classroom. He wondered if she was studying seriously or laughing with her friends. Realizing how lost in thought he had become, he bowed his head, trying to clear his mind. But no matter how hard he tried, Wagiri's image always returned. At that moment, he understood just how much he loved her. So his voice suddenly snapped him back to reality. His friends were asking if they could hang out at his place since they'd never been there before. Rintaro hesitated for so long that they quickly added it was fine if he didn't feel comfortable. Their concern struck him. When he was younger, other kids had teased him for coming from a family that owned a cake shop, saying it didn't fit his appearance. Since then, he'd always avoided talking about his home life. But now looking at his friends, he felt that maybe they wouldn't judge him. Just as Sohai offered to host instead, Rintaro finally said he'd ask his parents. His friends immediately brightened, excited for the weekend. When the weekend came, the boys stepped into Rintaro's family pastry shop. Instead of laughing at him, they were amazed by the colorful cakes and the warm smell of freshly baked bread. Rintaro relaxed a little as he saw their genuine excitement, feeling guilty for having doubted them. His mother came out to greet them with her usual cheer, and to Rintaro's surprise, his friends responded just as warmly, chatting with her as though they'd known her for years. She happily told them to eat a lot since she'd prepare a big lunch. Then she asked Rintaro to give them a tour of the house. He led them inside while she headed to the kitchen. The staff noticed how unusually happy she seemed, and she admitted it was because Rintaro had finally brought friends home. Before she could continue, a customer called from the front. She went out to serve them and froze when she saw a very familiar face. Meanwhile, the boys looked around the living room, curious about the decorations. They even found an old photo of a younger Rintaro with his older brother. Rintaro felt awkward, admitting to himself it was strange having friends over. Suddenly, his mother called for him. When he reached the stairs, he was startled to see Wagiri and Subaru standing there. Wagiri greeted him brightly while Subaru looked shy and hesitant. Wagiri explained they had just come to buy cakes, but since they knew everyone, she invited them to stay for lunch if the boys didn't mind. Ayato quickly agreed, and Soai even gestured for them to come in further, earning a scolding from Saku for acting like he owned the house. Everyone began to settle in, and Rintaro's mother thanked Subaru for being friends with her son. Wagiri apologized for intruding, but Rintaro told her it was fine. When she smiled at him, he blushed, remembering their aquarium trip. His mother noticed his rare, honest expression and smiled knowingly before heading back to the kitchen. The group started helping prepare for lunch. Wagiri quietly asked Subaru to check if her outfit looked okay since she hadn't expected to be inside Rintaro's home. Subaru reassured her that she looked cute as always, which made her pout slightly. Rintaro kept sneaking glances at her, secretly happy she was there. Lunch was soon ready, with 2 tables filled with delicious food. Everyone dug in happily. Rintaro noticed how much effort his mother put into making his friends feel welcome. She reminded them to take seconds if they wanted and return to the shop. During the meal, Sohei suddenly asked why Rintaro dyed his hair and pierced his ears. Rintaro admitted he had started in middle school. His friends grew curious about why. Embarrassed, he said it was a silly reason, but Wagiri also wanted to know. Finally, he confessed that he had once visited another cake shop where he saw a cheerful blonde baker with piercings. The man looked so happy that Rintaro wanted to be like him. That day, he asked his parents if he could dye his hair and get piercings, expecting them to refuse. Instead, they agreed right away. For the first time, he felt truly understood, but instead of helping him fit in, his new look made others avoid him more. By then, he had already given up on making friends. As he told his story, he didn't notice how quiet the room had become until he realized everyone was staring at him. He quickly apologized for ruining the mood, but Sohei reassured him, saying kids at his old school must have been blind because he would have been thrilled to be Rintaro's friend. Wagiri added softly that she felt the same way and was happy to be his friend. Rintaro blushed again, stunned by her words. Unbeknownst to him, his mother had overheard everything. She remembered the day she decided to dye her own hair and get piercings. She had seen Rintaro cry once looking so broken, and when he asked to change his appearance, she couldn't refuse. To ease his worry about scaring away customers, she did it first, showing him it wouldn't matter. Her husband had once told her he hoped Rintaro would understand her sacrifices, but she only hoped someone would one day accept him as he was. Watching him now laughing with friends felt like a dream come true. She entered the room with cakes, and everyone's eyes lit up. As she returned to the shop, Rintaro quietly thanked her at the stairs. She didn't know exactly why, but her eyes filled with tears as she went back to work. Later, the group gathered in front of the television, eating cake and playing games. Sohei cheered loudly when he beat Saku, teasing him, while Ayato pointed out they were really competing for second to last place. They were surprised when Wagiri played well, and she explained that she sometimes played with her family. Rintaro was shocked but happy, smiling when she gave him a bright grin in return. Sohei then asked if Rintaro helped much in the shop, hoping he'd have time for summer activities. Rintaro said he wasn't too busy, so they started making plans. They agreed a beach trip with fireworks would be perfect and invited Wagiri and Subaru to join. Both agreed happily, though Subaru reminded them exams came first. The boys groaned, suddenly remembering. So they dramatically begged Saku to tutor them, which Saku refused, but Wagiri suggested they all study together. Everyone was surprised but agreed. That evening, the group meets up again, this time not in a classroom, but in a restaurant. The girls spend a while deciding what to order, while Ayato and Saku notice something else entirely. Rintaro and Wagiri seem unusually close. There's an easy familiarity between them that no one else can quite miss. After finishing their meals, the group prepares to study. But before they even get started, Sohei slumps forward and falls asleep on the table. Rintaro explains he had stayed up the night before trying to study, which is why he's completely out of energy now. That's when Wagiri gets an idea. She moves across the table and brings up the restaurant's dessert menu. She suggests they make a deal. If they reach their study goals, they'll reward themselves with sweets. The mention of desserts instantly wakes Sohei up, his eyes sparkling like a little kid. The rest of the group can't help but laugh. They look exactly like mother and child negotiating. Wagiri, meanwhile, turns her attention to Rintaro and offers to help him study. Rintaro thanks her but politely refuses, saying he wants to try managing on his own for now. Ayato and Saku chime in, pointing out that he's been studying a lot during his lunch breaks. Embarrassed, Rintaro admits he doesn't want to lean on Wagiri too much, but promises to ask her for help when he's really stuck. Wagiri smiles kindly at him, proud that he's trying so hard to move forward. As the session starts, Subaru notices how flimsy the Chidori school workbooks are compared to hers. Sohei shows her how thin they are, almost like pamphlets. Subaru laughs when she realizes the Chidori workbook is the exact same kind she used back in middle school. Before long, Rintaro hits a wall with one of his problems. He asks Wagiri for help, but instead of focusing on her explanation, he finds himself staring at her face as she studies. He completely misses what she says. Patiently, Wagiri repeats the explanation from the beginning. Subaru runs into a problem too, but noticing Wagiri is busy with Rintaro, she decides to wait. Sohei sees her hesitation and offers to help, but after glancing at the workbook, he admits he's totally lost. He hands it back awkwardly. Luckily, Saku steps in. Subaru points out the problem she's stuck on, and in just a few seconds, Saku writes down the entire equation and solution. Subaru is amazed, but when she asks how he solved it, Saku gives only vague answers. Ayato finally cuts in, telling Subaru the truth. Saku is actually terrible at explaining things. Saku is shocked, looking around for confirmation. His friends exchange uneasy glances, trying to cover for him by claiming they just don't understand because they're dumb. Determined to prove himself, Saku tries again to explain, this time carefully breaking down the problem for Subaru and Waguri. But both girls end up looking more confused than before. Saku is horrified. The girls he admires as smart can't understand a word of his teaching. Embarrassed, he wants to get up and leave, but the group quickly bribes him with desserts to stop him from walking out. The next day, the boys gather in the classroom to see their results. To Sohei and Rintaro's huge relief, they passed all their exams again. Sohei waves his test scores around dramatically, thrilled that he can finally enjoy summer without worrying about school. Two of their classmates, however, are disappointed. They had hoped Sohei and Rintaro would be in supplementary classes with them like usual. Instead, they beg to know their secret. Sohei smirks and says they had a talented teacher this time. The classmates instantly assume he means Saku and swarm his desk, begging for lessons. Thankfully, the teacher arrives before Saku has to answer. The teacher congratulates the class, reminding them summer break is right around the corner. The students tease him for not sounding like a strict teacher, but he laughs and admits that while his class may be full of clowns, they're all genuinely good people. With a warm smile, he asks what plans they have for the break. The students immediately start shouting out ideas. One cautious student, however, asks about summer homework. The teacher reassures them that while studying is important, so is enjoying youth. He reminds them that summer is when the best memories are made. Of course, he warns those who failed that they'll still be busy. The class cheers anyway. After school, some classmates invite Rintaro's group to do something fun. Since no one can decide, they push Rintaro to pick. He suggests bowling, something they can all enjoy. As they walk to the bowling alley, Rintaro reflects on how much has changed since the sports festival. He never expected to feel this connected to his classmates. Back then, he had given up on friendship entirely. Now he's having fun, he's motivated, and he realizes there are things he wants in life again. Quietly, he admits to himself that Waguri might have been the spark that started it all. Along the way, one of their classmates spots the Kikyo girls across the street. Rintaro looks and sees Waguri chatting happily with Subaru and some friends. Sohei is about to call out, but Ayato and Sako quickly stop him. They remind him it would cause problems if people saw them openly hanging out with girls from another school. Their classmates do notice Waguri, recognizing her as the girl once seen waiting outside the gate, but Rintaro's friends manage to hide the truth. Still, Rintaro can't help staring after her until Sohei snaps him back to reality. As they walk, Sohei hangs back with Rintaro and casually asks if he's dating Waguri. Rintaro turns red and denies it. Sohei presses further, asking if he likes her. Rintaro fumbles, unable to give a clear answer. Sohei tells him he's way too obvious, and he's sure Ayato and Saku have noticed too. Up ahead, Ayato and Saku pretend not to hear, but Rintaro realizes his secret isn't as hidden as he thought. For the first time, he even wonders if Waguri herself already knows. Sohei assures him not to worry, boasting about his own skill at planning surprises, but before he can go further, Saku drags him away. Ayato lingers for a moment, quietly promising Rintaro that they'll keep his crush safe. At the bowling alley, the competition heats up. Sohei scores a strike, and his team erupts in cheers. Saku is next. Everyone hopes he'll fail, but to their shock, he also lands a strike. Confused, since they're on the same team, Saku just blinks. To lighten the mood, Sohei blurts out that Saku is terrible at video games. Everyone laughs, and soon the boys are making plans for a game session. When Rintaro's turn comes, his teammates worry about his posture. He announces he picked the wrong ball, and then realizes his fingers are stuck. Once he switches, his throw goes straight into the gutter. Mortified, Rintaro crouches on the ground, apologizing. The other team mocks him proudly, and his teammates argue back. Rintaro excuses himself to buy drinks, embarrassed by his poor performance. At the snack bar, he thinks about how losing means his team owes lunch to the winners. He wonders why people keep insisting he's dating Waguri. To him, just seeing her smile feels more than enough. Ayato suddenly taps his shoulder. They both grab drinks, and Rintaro apologizes for messing up earlier. Ayato reassures him it's not his fault, joking that the real blame lies with Sohei for stirring things up about his feelings for Waguri. Rintaro merely chokes on his drink at the blunt comment. Nervously, he asks Ayato what he thinks dating should be. Ayato admits cheerfully that he has no idea. He's never dated anyone himself. That honesty puts Rintaro at ease. Ayato warns him not to ask their other classmates, though, or they'll never let him live it down. Taking the question more seriously, Ayato explains that dating usually starts when two people realize they like each other. But he adds that it doesn't have to be complicated. It's okay to try even if you don't fully understand what dating means. Then Ayato points out something surprising. This is the first time Rintaro has ever asked him for advice. Rintaro hesitantly asks if he's really that obvious about his feelings. Ayato nods but says he's actually happy about it. To him, Rintaro is finally opening up and trusting his friends. He recalls when Rintaro shared the story of dyeing his hair and piercing his ears. It felt like proof that Rintaro was starting to see them as true friends. Rintaro straightens and firmly says he does trust them. Then he quickly apologizes, worried he sounded arrogant. Ayato laughs and tells him not to overthink it. He reassures Rintaro that he doesn't need to stress too much about Waguri, and no matter what happens, he'll always have an ally. Touched, Rintaro thanks him sincerely. Their teammates call them back. It's Rintaro's turn again. When they return, they see Sohei celebrating another strike. Ayato, however, suddenly sounds colder. He tells Rintaro they should win, especially since Sohei's antics had messed him up earlier. Rintaro smiles and agrees. By the end, Ayato's strikes turn the game around and secure their victory. Later that night, Rintaro checks their group chat. Sohei is desperately begging Ayato to cancel a bet about buying lunch. Ayato replies smugly that he's looking forward to tomorrow's free meal. Rintaro quietly smiles at the memory of Ayato's clutch performance, admitting to himself that today was genuinely fun. Just then, another message pops up, this time from Sohei, asking about everyone's summer plans. Rintaro's thoughts instantly drift to Waguri, but he shakes them off, reminding himself Sohei meant the whole group. Even so, he keeps thinking about her, about how she helped them all study. He wonders if it would be strange to plan something just for her. As he closes the chat, a new notification arrives. It's from Subaru. Reading it, Rintaro is so shocked he drops his phone on his face. The message: Waguri's birthday is coming up. She's too shy to say anything herself, but Subaru thought he should know. And just like that, summer plans suddenly feel a lot more complicated. The next morning in class, Rintaro's mind just wouldn't stay still. Instead of paying attention, he kept thinking about one thing: Waguri's birthday. Ever since Subaru messaged him the night before, the idea of what kind of gift he could give her kept spinning around in his head. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized he didn't actually know that much about her aside from the fact she loved cake. That small truth made him want to know her better, and since he'd started realizing his feelings, that desire had only grown stronger. But before he could sink too deep into his daydream, the teacher's voice snapped him back to reality. He was suddenly called on to read a passage out loud, and then, on top of that, told to wake up Sohei, who had already dozed off in the seat ahead. Rintaro nudged Sohei awake, though his mind quickly slipped right back into the thought that had consumed him all morning: Waguri's birthday. That evening, when Rintaro got home, he decided to ask Kyuko if she knew of any good cake shops nearby. But the way she looked at him, slightly offended, made him panic, almost as if he was saying her cakes weren't good enough. Rintaro rushed to explain that it wasn't like that. He just wanted to give Waguri something different for her birthday, not something she could already buy from their family shop. Hearing that, Kyuko gave him a curious look. She hadn't realized Rintaro was this serious about Waguri's birthday. And instead of recommending another shop, she threw him a curveball. She suggested he try baking a cake himself. Rintaro froze, caught completely off guard. He immediately insisted he couldn't bake a cake. He had no idea how. But Kyuko told him he could always ask their father, Kichiro, for help. Rintaro hesitated. He knew how much their father worked himself to the bone in the kitchen. It didn't feel right to trouble him with something like this. And then, as if to prove Rintaro's worries true, they suddenly heard a thump on the stairs. Looking over, they saw Kichiro collapse halfway down. Both Rintaro and Kyuko rushed over to help, dragging him to the couch. Watching his father look so exhausted, Rintaro sighed and told Kyuko there was no way he could bother him with a request right now. But Kyuko shook her head, explaining that their father worked himself that hard because he genuinely loved being in the kitchen. She even admitted that it was Kichiro who had baked the cakes for Rintaro's friends the other day, and that he had looked so excited while making them, though too tired afterward to meet them face to face. Not long after, Kichiro stirred awake. He blinked at them groggy and greeted them with a weary good morning, even though it was already dinner time. Kyuko asked gently if he was feeling well enough to eat. Rintaro watched quietly, torn between his worry and the question he wanted to ask. But then he remembered how happy his father had looked when he learned his cakes had been enjoyed. Rintaro finally gathered his courage and asked his father to teach him how to bake a cake. Hearing this, Kichiro was surprised and studied him carefully. Instead of asking what kind of cake Rintaro wanted to make, he asked a deeper question. What feelings did Rintaro want to put into the cake? Rintaro froze, unsure how to answer. But when he thought of Waguri, the truth came out. He just wanted her to be happy. Hearing that, Kichiro smiled. When he learned that Waguri's birthday was only 2 weeks away, he made a decision. He told Rintaro that from this moment on, Rintaro would undergo special training under him until the big day. And since he'd be learning directly from him, he expected nothing less than an amazing cake. Kyuko smiled warmly, relieved to see Rintaro opening up to his father, while father and son stepped into the kitchen to begin. That night marked the beginning of Rintaro's cake lessons. He studied recipes with Kichiro, practicing techniques and learning step by step. The training was exhausting. Night after night, the work wore him down. But little by little, he improved. At school, though, the toll was clear. His friends noticed him looking pale and tired. But even though his body looked drained, there was something fierce in his eyes that surprised them. They warned him PE was coming up and wondered if he'd even make it through. Rintaro explained he'd been staying up late baking cakes. At once, their faces lit up at the word cake, and they begged him to let them try some. But he shook his head, refusing. He wasn't ready for anyone to taste them yet. He got up to wash his face, only to bump his head on the doorframe on his way out, leaving his friends worried but amused. Meanwhile, in Waguri's class, her friends were also planning. They wanted to celebrate her birthday, which fell on the very first day of summer break. Sumaru, though happy that Waguri was being showered with attention, remembered that Rintaro was already planning something in secret, so she quickly suggested that the group celebrate Waguri's birthday the day after instead. She made an excuse that she couldn't join them otherwise, But deep down, she just wanted Rintaro's plan to stay intact. Wagiri agreed, touched that her friends wanted to celebrate with her, and when they hugged her all at once, she grew flustered but also deeply happy. Later that night, Rintaro checked his phone and saw a new message from Subaru, confirming that Wagiri would be free on her birthday. That's when panic struck him. He hadn't actually asked Wagiri herself about her plans. Fumbling for his phone, he quickly sent her a message casually asking if she was free on the 22nd, carefully avoiding mentioning her birthday. Her reply came almost instantly, full of typos from typing too fast, but she confirmed she was free. Rintaro let out a breath of relief. He could give her the cake on her birthday after all. On the other side, Wagiri read his message and felt her heart skip. When Rintaro wrote that he wanted to give her something, her cheeks grew warm. She tried to convince herself it wasn't about her birthday, since he wasn't supposed to know when it was. But then it hit her. Subaru must have told him. She immediately called Subaru, asking if Rintaro had contacted her. Subaru didn't deny it, which basically confirmed it. Wagiri tried to sound annoyed, but Subaru could hear the happiness in her voice. Smiling, Subaru told her she liked it when Wagiri talked about Rintaro, and she hoped Wagiri would tell her everything after her birthday. Hanging up, Wagiri fell back onto her bed, giddy at the thought of spending her birthday with him. Finally, the day arrived. Rintaro woke up early, ready for his final test. Under his father's strict supervision, he prepared the batter, baked the cake, sliced the layers, filled them with fruit, and decorated everything with icing and tiny cookies. When he finished, both he and Kyuko waited nervously as Kichiro judged the cake. After a long pause, he finally said Rintaro had passed his standards. Rintaro cheered in relief, while Kyuko grabbed a box for him to pack it in. Before leaving, Rintaro turned back to thank his father sincerely. Once he was gone, Kichiro admitted to Kyuko that he was glad. Rintaro had finally started smiling for real again. That evening, Rintaro walked toward the meeting spot carrying the bag with the cake box inside. He kept glancing at it, second-guessing if baking it had really been a good idea. Since he was early, he thought he'd have some time to calm himself down. But then, surprise, Wagiri was already there waiting. So he walked up, a little nervous, and she smiled, just as surprised to see him early. Timidly, he wished her a happy birthday and handed her the bag. She lit up right away, clearly happy to get something from him. When she asked if she could open it, he told her it might be better to wait until she got home, since it was a cake. And the moment she heard the word cake, her eyes sparkled with excitement. Looking around, Wagiri suddenly remembered a nearby park. She told Rintaro was her favorite spot, the same place she and Subaru had played when they were kids. And then she admitted she always wanted to bring Rintaro there one day, just to share those memories. This, she said, felt like the perfect time. So they sat down on a bench and Wagiri carefully opened the clear box. Inside was a sweet little cake decorated with cookies and icing. She was instantly enchanted. But soon she noticed something strange. It wasn't anything she had ever seen at his family's shop. For a moment she wondered if it was a new release. But then Rintaro shyly explained that it wasn't from the shop at all. He had baked it himself. He wanted to give her something different, something special, something that showed how thankful he was. Hearing that, Wagiri smiled warmly, her chest swelling with emotion. She told him she'd call later that night, already sure she would love it. Then they parted ways. When Wagiri got home, her family wasn't back yet. She hesitated, thinking she should wait, but temptation quickly won. She took some pictures of the cake on the table and then cut herself a slice. And the moment she tasted it, Rintaro's shy, honest expression came back to her mind. With a soft smile, she admitted to herself, it was delicious. Meanwhile, at Rintaro's house, he was sitting in the living room pretending to watch a comedy show, though his frown was deeper than usual. Kyuko and Kichiro exchanged worried looks. They knew he was still anxious about the cake. Then suddenly, his phone buzzed. Wagiri wanted to call. Rintaro shot up from the couch and dashed to his room, his parents laughing at how obvious he was. In his room, he nervously texted back that it was fine, and almost immediately, the phone rang. Wagiri's cheerful voice filled his ear, and she told him she really loved the cake. Rintaro let out a heavy sigh of relief, sinking to the floor. All those weeks of practice had finally paid off. Wagiri went on and on, saying the flavor was gentle and warm, comforting in a way, and that just one bite had lifted her heart. She also laughed as she explained that her family had loved it too, but her brother ate nearly half, leaving her with less than she wanted. Rintaro chuckled and promised he'd bake her more in the future. That promise made Wagiri even more excited, and she admitted she'd become a fan of his cakes. Eventually, they said goodnight. After the call, Rintaro returned to the living room, announcing the good news. Wagiri had liked the cake. Kyuko sighed in relief, while Kichiro smiled proudly, sure that she had truly enjoyed it. Then, surprising them, Rintaro said he wanted to work at the shop during the summer. He explained that he wanted to keep improving his baking before making her another cake. Kichiro took him seriously, warning he'd be stricter than ever, and that Rintaro would need to work every single day. Kyuko lightly flicked his forehead, telling him not to joke and to enjoy his summer, reminding him he could always help anytime. But Rintaro's determined look didn't fade. He meant it. He wanted to help every day he didn't have plans with his friends. Kichiro then asked which part of the cake Wagiri had liked most, saying he wanted to use his son's idea as inspiration for a new recipe. Kyuko smiled as she watched them, knowing that Rintaro's happiness now came from both his family and his friends. And meanwhile, his group chat with friends was exploding with summer updates, marking the start of a whole new season. That day finally came when Rintaro and his friends set out on their long-awaited beach trip. Everyone had been looking forward to it, but no one more than Sohei. The moment the train doors slid open, Sohei was the first to leap out, stretching his arms wide as he breathed in the salty air. His excitement was impossible to miss. Saku and Ayato couldn't resist teasing him, laughing about how over-the-top he was being. Rintaro, meanwhile, felt embarrassed for an entirely different reason. He hadn't gotten a proper night's sleep, not because of nerves, but because he was so thrilled about being able to spend the whole day with Wagure. Once the entire group had stepped off the train, Sohei took the lead without hesitation. He immediately declared his mission: buy fireworks. With that in mind, he charged ahead, leaving Subaru quietly trailing behind the others. As they reached the small beach town, something else stole Sohei's attention. The sight of the food stalls lining the streets made his eyes sparkle, and to no one's surprise, Wagure's eyes lit up too. Fireworks were instantly forgotten. The two of them hurried toward the delicious smells, and the rest of the group followed along. No one minded. After all, when it came to Sohei, food always came first. The group stopped at a sandwich stall where Sohei and Wagure eagerly coaxed everyone to check out the wide selection. Ayato and Sohei noticed Subaru standing off to the side, unusually quiet. Wanting to involve her, they invited her to take a closer look and choose something she liked. But Subaru, nervous and unsure, asked them to just pick something for her instead. The boys agreed, though Wagure kept watching Subaru with quiet concern. Later, when Wagure bought her own sandwiches, she showed Subaru her small assortment of snacks and suggested warmly that they share. Subaru relaxed, her shoulders softening as she agreed, visibly comforted by Wagure's kindness. Meanwhile, Rintaro and Saku split off from the group to buy drinks. On the way, Saku brought up Rintaro's part-time job at the cake shop. Rintaro explained that he helped out whenever the group didn't already have plans, and this time he had volunteered himself because, surprisingly, he really enjoyed baking. Saku smiled at the admission, suggesting Rintaro should think about selling cakes during the upcoming school festival. As they walked, Saku slowed down in front of a donut stall. Rintaro, noticing his pause, suggested they grab one, knowing how much Saku loved donuts. But before Saku could reply, Sohei suddenly popped up from behind and teased him loudly, asking if he was going to buy one. Saku refused, claiming it would be wasteful since they had already bought so many sandwiches. The others, however, weren't fooled. Ayato insisted Saku should just be honest. No one would make fun of him for liking donuts. Wagure joined in the conversation, amused at the revelation that Saku liked donuts. Then, almost casually, she mentioned that Subaru loved them too. Sohei offered to buy some for Subaru, but Subaru quickly turned him down, flustered by the sudden attention. The group decided to move on, reminding themselves they still hadn't bought fireworks or drinks. Subaru lingered behind, though. Her eyes lingered on the donut stall, her expression soft and wistful. She wanted one badly, but the words caught in her throat. Saku, turning back for a moment, caught the way Subaru's gaze lingered. He didn't say anything yet, but he noticed. Finally, the group reached the beach. Sohei was once again the first to sprint ahead, charging straight into the water. The others followed more slowly, stepping into the shallows to soak their feet. Rintaro was shocked at the icy touch, while Wagure smiled as she enjoyed the wet sand squishing under her toes. Subaru, however, stayed back on the shore. She loved watching Wagure and the others enjoy themselves, but a knot tightened in her chest. She wished she could join them, yet she feared she would only ruin the fun if she tried. Wagure turned to call her over, but stopped when she noticed Subaru's troubled expression. Eventually, the group settled on the sand to eat their sandwiches. Sohei was the first to finish, immediately announcing he was going back to the water. Wagure encouraged the boys to keep playing, while she chose to stay back with Subaru. Side by side, the two girls quietly ate and fondly watched the others splashing in the waves. Sensing something was off, Wagure gently asked Subaru if something was bothering her. Subaru hesitated, then sighed, realizing Wagure had already seen right through her. She admitted she was struggling and asked for a favor. Not long after, Wagure took Subaru's hand and led her toward the boys. But as they approached, Subaru gently pulled her hand free, summoning her courage. Her voice trembled slightly as she called out to each of them by name. She admitted she had been looking forward to the trip, but her heart had also felt heavy. With difficulty, she explained that she was uncomfortable around men. Sohei immediately looked ready to apologize, but Subaru pushed on before he could. She revealed that something from her past had left her fearful, and for years she avoided men as much as she could. But after spending time with Rintaro and the others, she realized she had begun to warm up to them. Even so, she sometimes still felt nervous and unconsciously pulled away. Subaru apologized again, but added that she truly wanted to stay with them and enjoy the summer together. She recalled what she and Wagure had talked about earlier, how fun the boys looked splashing in the water, and admitted she wanted to be part of that fun. Turning to Rintaro and his friends, she apologized once more, saying she wanted to be their friend. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then suddenly, Saku splashed her with water. Everyone froze in surprise, Subaru most of all. She thought she had upset him, but Saku quickly clarified. He explained that he wouldn't have joined this trip if he didn't already consider her someone close. Sohei interrupted, asking Saku to dumb it down because he didn't understand. Saku repeated himself, simply saying he had always thought of Subaru as a friend. Soe grinned and echoed the same sentiment, followed by Ayato and Rintaro, who also voiced their agreement. Seeing the perfect chance, Wagiri playfully pushed Subaru into the shallows. Subaru stumbled and nearly fell, catching herself with her hands. The group rushed to check if she was hurt, but Subaru laughed lightly, assuring them she was fine. Wagiri offered her a hand, and Subaru stood, relief flooding her face. For the first time that day, she felt like she truly belonged. Then Sohei suddenly gasped, pointing toward the horizon. The group turned and fell silent, awestruck by the breathtaking sunset. Sohei quickly decided it was the perfect time for fireworks. As the others set up, Subaru hung back. Her stomach growled softly, and Sako noticed. He rummaged through his bag and handed her a small pack of donuts, teasing that she should eat more since she barely touched her lunch. Subaru's eyes widened. He had noticed after all. Grateful, she nibbled on the donuts while watching the others. For the first time, she realized she was taking real steps to overcome her fears. Soon the boys and Wagiri called her over. Subaru gathered her courage and joined them, and together they lit up the night sky with fireworks. Laughter echoed across the beach, and Subaru admitted inwardly that she was having the time of her life. The finale, a fountain of sparks, was dazzling but disappointingly short. Sohei immediately whined about buying more. The others tried to convince him it was enough, but Subaru surprised them all by agreeing with Sohei. So most of the group headed back into town to buy more fireworks and drinks. Rintaro and Wagiri stayed behind to watch over their things. As the noise of the group faded, Rintaro noted how quiet the beach felt. Wagiri called his attention and suggested they light the last of the sparklers. They did, their hands glowing in the soft crackle of light. Wagiri admitted she felt bad the sparklers were always forgotten, even though they were so beautiful. Silence fell between them, but it was a comfortable kind. Then Wagiri spoke again, thanking Rintaro for supporting Subaru earlier. She admitted she was relieved to see how deeply everyone cared for Subaru. Rintaro confessed he was surprised Subaru opened up at all, and Wagiri agreed. She explained that Subaru rarely shared her feelings, especially with men. Ever since her past troubles, she had closed herself off, but since meeting Rintaro and the others, she had started to relax. Wagiri pointed out that the change had started after Subaru began talking with Rintaro. Rintaro stared, processing her words, barely noticing when his sparkler went out. Wagiri lit another and offered it to him. He took it quietly, but inside he couldn't accept her praise. He believed the reason he could support Subaru and grow closer to his friends was because of Wagiri. She had made him believe he could be a good person. Whispering, he thanked her. Wagiri blinked, surprised, but before she could respond, Rintaro raised his voice, repeating the words with more determination. She quickly turned away, cheeks burning, and murmured her thanks in return. She admitted she had a lot of fun that day, and Rintaro agreed. Inwardly, he cherished the moment, realizing how precious his time with her had become. Without thinking, he let slip that he didn't want their time together to end. Wagiri froze, stunned, before turning back to him. Realizing what he just said, Rintaro panicked and begged her to forget it. But instead of teasing him, Wagiri lit another sparkler and gently asked where they should go next, since summer had only just begun. She began excitedly listing ideas: barbecues, summer festivals, and more. She admitted it was always sad when good times ended, but that was exactly why they should make new plans to look forward to. As she spoke, her smile shone so brightly that Rintaro couldn't hold it in anymore. He blurted out that he liked her. The realization hit him immediately, and he stammered an apology. But Wagiri had clearly heard. Both of their faces turned crimson and silence fell again. At that exact moment, Sohei appeared behind them, startling them apart. He noticed their flushed faces, but Rintaro quickly insisted it was just from the heat of the sparklers. Sohei seemed to buy the excuse and proudly showed off the fireworks he bought. Subaru noticed that Wagiri still hadn't moved from her spot, so he called out to her, and that snapped her out of her daze. She quickly gathered her things and joined the others. Later, as colorful sparks continued to burst above them, everyone cheered, though both Wagiri and Rintaro's thoughts were elsewhere. Eventually, the long day at the beach came to an end, and everyone started heading home. On his way back, Rintaro couldn't stop scolding himself. He kept replaying his sudden confession in his head, especially since Wagiri had looked so unsettled afterward. He couldn't understand why he had blurted it out when he had sworn to himself never to reveal his feelings. And yet, at the same time, there was a strange sense of relief, because at least the truth was out. Still, he resolved not to trouble her anymore, and he swore he would find a way to make things right. Meanwhile, Wagiri was walking home with Subaru. Subaru noticed right away that Wagiri seemed distracted and disoriented, so she tried to draw her into light conversation. Just as Wagiri finally responded, her phone rang. The moment she saw Rintaro's name flashing on the screen, she froze in panic. That marks the end of today's anime recap. If you enjoyed the video and want more of it, please support the channel by leaving a like and subscribe. Let's help us reach a current goal of 10K subscribers.